Hey, my name's James Nicholson. In this video, I've got a major update on the EPC regulations. Now, last week, Ed Miliband talked about the fact that they're going to bring the EPC rules forward significantly. This video is really important for you to understand if you're a landlord, if you're a tenant, you really should understand what's going on as well, because this could massively impact your rental costs. And even if you just own a property, you should understand what's happening in the private rental sector, because this could eventually get rolled out onto all properties throughout the UK. So Ed Miliband is the Energy Secretary, and there's been talk that the Labour government would put EPCs and enforce that a landlord has to have an EPC of a level C by 2030. Well, there's a big change. This week, in the last 7 days, that's been brought forward massively till 2028. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how many landlords does this impact, what's it likely to do to rents, how much is this going to cost a landlord to get this done, and what are the key dates that you need to know. If you're new around here and you haven't done already, do subscribe to the channel over there and hit the bell notification. I'll give you all the updates that you need on this EPC stuff as and when it happens. And let's make more people aware of this content. I think this is a very, very important video for everybody to understand what's going on. So do two things here. First, smash like, tickle like, do something to the like button. Second, share this video, WhatsApp it, email it, Facebook message it to someone and let them know what's going on in the market, because this does make a big difference to a lot of people. So what's the proposal? Well, the proposal is that new tenancies from 2028 will need to have an EPC of level C. Now that's really a big difference. 2 years might not sound like much, but bringing it all the way forward like that is really going to impact landlords. It's really also going to impact tenants, and I'm going to go into all of that in this video. What they're saying as well for existing tenancies, because not everyone's going to be a new tenant, are they? So for existing tenancies, this will be brought forward to 2030. You've got to have an EPC of level C. Now that is what we were expecting. But the problem with all of this is that there's a lot of costs involved in upgrading a property, and not every property can be upgraded to a level C. So here's the timeline of what we're expecting at the moment. So in 2025 will be the consultation. And so that's the consultation period. There'll be lots of discussions in Parliament. Bills will be read, similar to what you're seeing with the Renters' Rights Bill and the Leasehold Reform Act. So there'll be lots of discussions every few months about this. Then in 2026 is where things will be discussed, and this will start to move forward quite quickly. And so what they're saying is in 2026, they will produce new EPC metrics. So new EPC metrics in 2026. And so they will be announced by the government. Now, this makes it difficult because right now you might be a landlord and you might have a property that is a level C, and you might be thinking, a level D, and you might be thinking, well, I'll crack on, I've got some money at the moment, I'll get this work done. Problem is you don't know what the new metrics are going to be, and you also don't know for sure, which is a difficulty, if you did the work today, is this going to count towards the allowance that you've got to spend, which I'm going to cover in a minute. So that's an important consideration here. So in 2026, we've got to wait a whole year in order for them to tell us how the EPCs work. Now, I just want to give you some experience what I've had on commercial. So I'm in an office here in Dorking in Surrey, and this property has sash windows, so they're not particularly warm, and the EPC level was something like an F. Now, when I moved into this property, it was bad in that scenario that we didn't have gas central heating. So that got marked down for the landlord. But they changed the EPC rules for commercial properties, and they said you weren't going to be able to rent them out unless you hit a certain level. And they changed it that suddenly, the second time round they did the EPC, that actually electric was better and more efficient and gave you more score. So the landlord scraped through by the skin of their teeth to be able to rent the property to us. Now that could happen with the EPC rules. So in the consultation in 2025, they're going to discuss the new rules and say what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. And the EPCs could be totally different. So that makes it difficult for you as a landlord right now to do upgrades and know if they're going to count ultimately to what the new rules will be. What will then happen in 2026 is that the EPC surveyors, I don't know if that's the right word, the people that go out and do the EPCs, they will be trained. They will be trained on the new system with a new EPC software. So we have new EPC software in 2026, and all the assessors, that's probably the right word, isn't it? The assessors will be taught how to use that software and understand what really works. So what we're saying right now is that your EPC that you've got today is irrelevant. You've got to wait. You don't know whether it's going to improve or get significantly worse. So who knows how strict this is going to be. So in my experience in the commercial world, they got a little easier to pass. And so that's what happened in my office, at least. It got a little easier. They didn't do any work on the property, but they got that higher EPC grading. I don't know if that's going to happen on the residential or it's going to get harder. So we've got to really wait and see on that. So that is a problem for landlords. They can't really do any work right now until they know what is going on. So new EPCs will be agreed, announced, and the format will be sorted in 2026. So what's next? 2028 is the next one. So new tenancies have got to have all of this sorted by 2028. That's what they're proposing at the moment. Before we carry on, there's quite a bit more to talk about here. I have actually made an ebook on how to improve your EPC, the most cost-effective ways to do that. Now, obviously, this is based off the current EPC format, but these are little wins and little things that you can do to make your property more energy efficient, and very, very likely that they would count towards the new EPC rules anyway. So do grab that ebook while you're here. I'll pin it in the first comment and I'll put it in the description as well. So do grab that while you're here. So 2028, what we're saying is the rules will change for new tenancies. So all your new tenancies are then. And then all tenancies will have to have this by 2030. Now, as we said, not every property can get to a level C. It's just not a thing. Like, not every single property can do that. Some properties, leasehold properties, you won't be able to do any work. Maybe you've got double glazed windows and the size of the rooms wouldn't allow you to do internal improvement works because it will be a breach of your lease. And collectively, the whole block, most of them own the property, so they're not landlords, so they don't have to do anything. In that scenario, we need to address what happens then. So this is what will happen in 2025. In the discussions, hopefully, they'll iron out what will happen if the freeholders object to you doing certain work. You definitely, in a lot of places, in a flat, you're not just going to be able to have one flat that has external insulation and all the others don't. That would look weird. It will cost significantly more to do that. So that is a problem going forward. So what they're suggesting, and this is something that's got worse, is that you'll have to spend a minimum of £15,000. Now, here's where it gets slightly ridiculous, is the government has said landlords should start now on this. You should crack on and do this work immediately. Maybe you want to do that. Problem is, it hasn't been identified what would happen with your tax return, what would happen if this costing is definitely counted towards that. Because let's just say you spent 15 grand in 2025 improving your property, but when they get to 2026, where they figured out the new EPC rules, they suddenly say, well, this is when it starts from. And then you've got to spend another 15 grand because you've got to prove that you spent 15 grand. What I'm saying is stuff that you did in the past, maybe you bought double glazing in 2022, 23, 24, that's not going to count towards this 15 grand. It's going to have to be, there's going to be a specific date where they say, from now, you spend the 15 grand and it will count. You're going to have to keep all the receipts and probably use approved contractors as well. You can't get your Uncle John to do the work. This is where it all gets complicated. They're saying crack on and do it now, but I don't think I would do that if I was a landlord. This impacts a lot of properties as well. So how many properties does it impact? It impacts 2.5 million rentals. 2.5 million rentals are at EPC or below. So even if all the landlords would said, you know what, I've got 15 grand for every property, it's not a problem financially, to find contractors to do all of this work is going to be really, really hard because they're going to have certain skills, and that is going to really slow this down. So the government have to think this stuff through as well. We also need to know, if you don't spend that 15 grand because you can't, or you couldn't get a contractor, or something happens along the line, what happens then? If you've got a tenant, does that tenant suddenly have to move out of the property and the property goes off the market totally until you find somewhere? There's a lot of questions, and this is the stuff that will get worked through in 2025. But this 15 grand has gone up from 10. So in November and December, they were talking about £10,000 being spent on a property, and that was ringing alarm bells with landlords, and they were leaving over that. Like, landlords have already quit, some of them, because of this. The fact that you're whacking it up by another 50% is not great, in my opinion. So, landlord surveys. There's some landlord surveys gone out. I found one that had 10,000 landlords that have been surveyed, and 75% of those landlords, 75% of them have said they're not going to improve their properties right now. They're going to wait until 2030 because they believe that the government will back down on this eventually, like the Conservatives did. This was going to happen under the Conservatives by 2028, and they removed it totally. They said it's unrealistic, it's not going to happen, and it's going to cause too many landlords to quit and cause more of a housing crisis. So they stopped it and they pulled back. There was no EPC rules for a time, and then Labour got in power, they brought it back, and they brought that deadline forward by 2 years. So 2030 is when all existing tenancies have to have it. Now, this indicates a problem to me as well, because let's just say 75% of landlords do not do this work because they're waiting for this 2030 deadline, and they think that Labour will not be in power by then, and the Conservatives or Reform will be in power by then, and they'll change the rules. In that scenario, if Labour did win and got into power again, what you're going to have then is something like let's just say it's 2 million out of these 2.5 million properties that have got months or a year to get this stuff done. There's definitely not going to be enough contractors then, and it is going to be an absolute farce and a shambles. So it's something that we've got to keep an eye on. So the government have also said another thing is that there is some support on this. So let me give you some ideas on some schemes that you could look at. Now, some of these schemes, they've been highlighted by the government, but they're not always relevant to landlords. So I'm going to talk about them and then you can have a look. But what it could mean is that they would change shortly and include landlords. So we have the boiler upgrade scheme is something you could go and have a look at. And that's where you can get some support on that. A boiler in the current EPC does make a big difference. So that could be something. Great insulation scheme. So now, that could be one to go and check as well. There are some fuel poverty schemes as well. That's dependent on your tenant. So I don't see how they're going to work as well, but they are talking about that stuff as well. And hopefully they'll bring out some new schemes. So there's not a lot of support financially here for landlords. Here's what I think they should do. This would be my solution, is that they should allow mortgage lenders to give landlords an equity release. And they should make it so the lenders are like a bounce back loan with when we had COVID. And so a bounce back loan, any business could get that. And it was really simple to get. But what I'm saying here is that you allow the landlords to take an equity release, even if it means their loan to value doesn't match the lending criteria. It's kind of like a separate part of the mortgage that is registered against the title deed. So the mortgage company is protected. But that's a way that landlords can get access to this finance. 15 grand on an interest only mortgage over 25 years is peanuts. And that's a way that this could work. They need to look at some creative ways to get this to become affordable. So look, this is a bit of a shock for a lot of landlords, and tenants have got to understand that this stuff is going to make rents go up. Without a doubt, that will happen. You might live in a property where it's an EPC level C already, so your landlord doesn't have to do any work to the property. But maybe all the landlords on the rest of the street are a level D. They have to do the work, and they subsequently increase the rent from £1,000 a month to £1,200 a month. That now makes the market rate £1,200, and it means that likely your rent could increase to that level as well. And this is what's going to impact people significantly. So do not sleep on this. Do get informed, get the ebook on that. And the last thing I'd like to say is this week, it's my birthday, Valentine's Day. And this week I'm doing a special offer on the fundamentals of property investing. We've reduced the price to £24. That's the lowest we've ever done that. So in the description, I'm going to put a link where you can grab the fundamentals of property investing this week only for just £24. So do grab that while you're here as well. Do get informed on all this stuff by subscribing, and check out all the other content on my channel, including this video right here.